Hi there, it is Tuesday, and I am happy to have you. Thank you so much to everybody who joined me at last night's hangout. We went long. By the end, we started with, like 60 people. By the end, there were still 27 people 3 hours later. I just couldn't stop. We were having too much fun. So thank you very much to everybody who came. I will share a link to last night's hangout if anybody wants to rewatch it. If you're a paid subscriber, you can do that. We'll have another one Thursday, but that was a lot of fun. So thank you to everybody who showed up. And I have got the great Jeff Jarvis joining me today. He was great. You're going to love my conversation with him. It begins at 23 minutes into today's show. But man, what a day yesterday. I've got your headlines and your clips. And obviously yesterday was a real hard day if you paid attention to the news. There were two fun things that happened. One was that Blue Sky, which is the billionaire Jeff Bezos' space exploration company, sent a bunch of women, 3 celebrity women, Gayle King and Katy Perry, and Jeff Bezos sent his own wife into space, which I thought was kind of hilarious. And when they landed, Jeff Bezos himself ran over to the capsule that just parachuted into the desert, and he ate shit. He fell, and the entire world watched on the internet. So that was pretty funny. And the other thing that was great was that the Vice President of the United States, J.D. Vance, who is from Ohio, he welcomed the Ohio State Buckeyes, the football team, to the White House with their trophy because they were the national championship, and it broke in his hand. He broke it. So Jeff Bezos ate shit, and J.D. Vance did what he does every day, which was screw up. And so that was kind of fun. But then later on, we learned that our president is even more authoritarian, quicker than we thought he would be. So let's get to it, because plenty to talk about with all the news yesterday. But of course, the big headline was Trump in the gaudy Oval Office, which he's ruined, was there with the president of El Salvador, a guy named Nayib Bukele, along with a number of cabinet members, White House staff, some circus clowns, and some sycophantic reporters, along with a couple that asked good questions. Well, the meeting appeared to be as staged as Trump's February meeting with the Ukraine president, Volodymyr Zelensky. It was designed to send a message, says our friend Heather Cox Richardson. At the meeting, Trump and Bukele, who was clearly doing Trump's bidding, announced they would not bring Kilmar Abrego Garcia home, defying the U.S. Supreme Court. Marcy Wheeler of the Empty Wheel noted that all the people who should be submitting sworn declarations before U.S. District Court judge made comments not burdened by oaths or risk of contempt, rehearsed comments for the camera. They falsely claimed that the court had ruled Abrego Garcia was a terrorist, insisted the whole case was about the president's power to control foreign affairs. On NPR, Steve Inskeep put it, if I understand this correctly, the U.S. president has launched a trade war against the world, believes he can force the EU and China to meet his terms, is determined to annex Canada and Greenland, but is powerless before the sovereign might of El Salvador? Is that it? Legal analyst Harry Littman of Talking Feds wrote, what we all just witnessed had all the earmarks of a criminal conspiracy to deprive Abrego Garcia of his constitutional rights as well as an impeachable offense. The fraud scheme was a phony agreement engineered by the U.S. to have Bukele say he lacks power to return Abrego Garcia, and he won't do it. And Adam Sir wrote in The Atlantic, the, quote, rhetorical game the administration is playing where it pretends it lacks the power to ask for Abrego Garcia to be returned while Bukele pretends he doesn't have the power to return him is an expression of obvious contempt for the Supreme Court and for the rule of law. Legal analyst Chris Geidner noted that Trump's declaration this morning that he wanted to deport homegrown criminals suggests that the plan all along has been able to get rid of U.S. citizens by creating a Schrodinger's box where anyone can be sent, but where once they are there, the U.S. cannot get them back. They are in the, quote, custody of a foreign sovereign. And Timothy Snyder, scholar Timothy Snyder of authoritarianism, said, he explained the larger picture on authoritarianism. He said, on the White House theory, if they abduct you, get you on a helicopter, get you to international waters, shoot you in the head, and drop your corpse in the ocean, that is legal because it is the conduct of foreign affairs. He compared it to the Nazis' practice of pushing Jews into statelessness because it's easier to move people away from the law than it is to move the law away from people. Almost all of the killing took place in artificially created stateless zones. So just a few of the reactions aggregated on this horrible news yesterday I wanted to mention. Lots more to talk about that, obviously, and it's not going away, but these are the headlines where I don't go too in-depth, and that, of course, was yesterday's top story as well as it should be. Also yesterday, Harvard rejected the president's authoritarian demands. They said they would not comply with policy changes requested by the Trump administration. So that's now setting up a showdown between the government and the nation's wealthiest university. The Trump administration said that it was reviewing $9 billion in federal funding for Harvard. $9 billion in federal funding. What? That they'd laid out several demands in a letter. They said the school must reduce the power of students and faculty over the university's affairs, report foreign students who commit conduct violations to federal authorities, and bring in an outside party to ensure that the school is, quote, viewpoint diverse, among other actions. In Pennsylvania, of course, the governor there, you heard about it. That's why I say, of course, I'm sure you heard about it. Governor Josh Shapiro and his family were forced to flee from the governor's official residence when an arsonist attacked it. I'm not sure we know exactly what the motive is, but a lot of people are saying because he was celebrating Seder, he's Jewish, Josh Shapiro, that it was anti-Semitic. We'll see. In Los Angeles, costs to the county for January's fires are expected to approach $2 billion, a figure released yesterday. A Russian ballistic missile strike killed at least 31 people, injured more than 80 others in a Ukrainian city on Sunday, according to the Ukrainian president there, Vladimir Zelensky, marking one of the deadliest single attacks on the country this year, on Palm Sunday, no less. Hungary made another awful authoritarian move. The Hungarian parliament on Monday passed an amendment to the constitution that allows the government to ban public events by LGBT communities, a decision that legal scholars and critics call another step towards authoritarianism by the populist government there. And even though there's no good reason to end these protections, the Trump administration is going to end temporary protections for more than 10,000 people from Afghanistan and Cameroon, putting them on track for deportation in May and June. Horrible. Department of Homeland Security officials said this on Friday. Many of the Afghans affected by the decision had been allowed in the United States after the disastrous U.S. withdrawal from their country in 2021. Now the Trump administration could send them back to the country under Taliban rule, which is absolutely horrific. The Supreme Court protected affirmative action in the military, but here we are. The Air Force Academy has stopped taking race, gender, or ethnicity of applicants into consideration. The Justice Department stated in a filing Friday, responding to a lawsuit that accused the institution of discrimination for making class diversity a factor in its administration process. The Associated Press was blocked from Trump's Oval Office press gaggle yesterday, ignoring a recent court ruling. So that's another court ruling they're ignoring. And those are the headlines that I've got for you from yesterday. Now it's time to get to the clip show, audio clips that I've gathered for you. Let's start with two legal analysts that were on CNN last night. Both, it's Jeffrey Toobin and former U.S. District Judge Shira Scheindlin with Anderson Cooper.
Jeffrey, we did hear the president on that hot mic saying that he wants to send U.S. citizens to El Salvador, urging the president to build a bunch of extra prisons there. Remotely constitutional?
Not as far as I'm aware. You know, there are laws about how we punish people in this country. You know, Title 18 of the United States Code defines criminal laws in this country, defines the kinds of punishment, and there is not included in Title 18 send someone out of the country, much less to a hellhole prison in another country. It just doesn't exist, that authority.
Totally agree. You cannot do that. But this president seems to want to push the limits of power and see how far he can get.
And also, Judge, let me just ask about Stephen Miller, the non-lawyer we heard in the White House there, making the claim that the administration did not make a mistake by sending Abrego Garcia to El Salvador, despite the fact that they have admitted as much in court filings.
Correct. And as you pointed out, there's no evidence that this man is a member of the one gang or the MS-13 gang. Neither of them. There's no proof. There's no evidence. But people seem to be operating on innuendo, not evidence. So it was wrong, and they admitted it was wrong. And there's no way out of that.
But they do now appear to be trying to change that. I mean, what Stephen Miller said was, as the judge said, 180 degrees different from what the U.S. attorneys, the lawyer for the United States said in court. But they are now trying to present Mr. Abrego Garcia as the criminal that the government acknowledged just a few days ago that he wasn't.
Can I just ask, you both seem to agree the Supreme Court may have been more deliberate in its language than a lot of people are, analyzing here. What do you think the Supreme Court thinks about all this? What do you think the Chief Justice thinks when he sees this man not being returned?
I think they're very, very cautious, and they don't want a confrontation with the president. That's why the language is so cautious. But I think they want him returned.
Well, but I also think they do not want an international confrontation that they cause, and they will be very deferential. If El Salvador says we are simply not turning him over, I bet this Supreme Court will say, well, there's nothing that can be done in that case.
You don't think this man is coming back?
I don't think he's coming back, basically,
I'm still
ever.
hopeful.
Judge Jeffrey, thank you both.
There you go. That's just one reaction. And really, honestly, I probably should have spent an hour collecting more reactions. I've read those quotes earlier at the top, but I'm going to move on past that really important issue, even though it's hard to get to some of the other news out there, clips from yesterday. I want to play this for you because, of course, Joe Rogan is one of the most popular podcasts in the country, shows in the country, one of the most famous people in the country. But this week, he had finally had somebody on that pushed back on his nonsense, conservative historian. He had a tense exchange with this British conservative columnist named Douglas Murray. He takes on the conspiracy-pushing Rogan right on his show almost immediately during the appearance. This is really good. I watched like a lot of it. I thought it was very important. Here is Douglas Murray.
And that's horse shit of the most profound kind.
I don't think that's what he's trying to do.
I think that's exactly what they're doing. And the problem is that because your own platform has come about because you're a very successful comedian and much more, and you do ask questions, and you are interested. But there are a lot of people who have come along, partly I think because they've come on this show, who have come along and they've decided, I can play this double game. On the one hand, I'm going to push really edgy and frankly sometimes horrific opinions. And then if you say that's wrong, they say I'm a comedian.
But wait a minute,
how can you tell me I'm just a comedian?
Well,
yeah, you're going to want to hear the rest of that, right? All right. Well, there's just a little sampling of it. How about this? I saw this on Instagram. This is a guy who had just been released. He was almost arrested, and he is an American citizen. He's here legally, but he has an accent and he's Hispanic. But what's interesting is he was almost arrested, and he actually voted for Donald Trump. So you hear him question his own vote here, and, well, here it is.
Police car behind me put the lights on, so I stepped on the side, right, to let him pass through. But it didn't happen, so he just parked in front of my car, the other one parked behind me, and they just got out of the car with the guns in the hands and say, turn off the car, give me the keys, open the window. And at this point, they didn't ask me for any ID. I was telling the officer if I can give him the ID, but he said that just keep my hands up, not moving. After that, he told me to get out of the car, and then he put the handcuffs on me. And then he went to me and said, how did I get into this country, and if I was waiting for court or if I have any case. And he looked at his other partner like, smiling, like saying, can you believe this guy? At this point, I was with handcuffs sitting on the sidewalk. And then he took my ID and saw that it was a real ID. The other guy said, take the handcuffs off, take the handcuffs off. I was Trump supporter. I voted for Trump last elections, but because I thought it was going to be the things, be pointless, like, just go against criminals, not every illegal Hispanic looking like that they will assume we are illegals. That's what they're doing now. They're just following Hispanic people looking like, because they didn't ask me for anything.
They didn't ask you for anything. Shocking. Let's go back to that Abrego Garcia news. I just found this one. This is Jake Tapper on CNN yesterday. I thought it was pretty good.
Just a quick fact check on some of this and some important background on Garcia, who is married to a U.S. citizen. He has one child with her and two stepchildren. It is true that Garcia is a citizen of El Salvador, and it is true that he entered the United States illegally sometime around 2011. His attorneys say that he was initially fleeing gang violence in El Salvador. As for the allegation that he's a member of MS-13, which he fervently denies, well, the evidence of that is much more flimsy. According to court documents, Garcia and three other men were arrested in 2019. He was asked if he was a gang member. He said no. Garcia had been deemed a gang member by the Prince George's County Police Department in part because he was at the time wearing a Chicago Bulls hat and a hoodie, and a confidential informant claimed that Garcia was an active member of MS-13, although he denied that at the time. Now, later that year, an immigration judge granted Garcia protective status, allowing him to stay in the United States legally, finding that even though Garcia was liable for deportation because he was in the country illegally, he should be protected from deportation, the judge said, to El Salvador because that would constitute a danger to him. Here we are 6 years later. Despite that protective order and despite 0 criminal convictions, Garcia is now back in El Salvador, and not just El Salvador, in a notorious prison there. And while Trump's officials claim and admit, rather, that it was an oversight that he was deported to begin with, they're still clinging to this rather shoddily proven claim that he is, without question, an MS-13 member, and they're doing that to justify the fact that he is sitting in this prison in El Salvador.
And well done, Jake Tapper. Thanks for the fact check. Now let's go to Fox News. Jesse Waters. I never play him, but he asked the right question, or a question that was right, to the Attorney General on Fox News last night. Can you do this to Americans? And just listen closely. She doesn't answer this.
Highly organized. They are murdering people. They are raping people. They are organized crime at its worst. They are spread rampant throughout our country, and we are going to rid our country of MS-13 and TDA, and we're just thankful that President Bukele will take them in a prison in El Salvador.
Now, the president was musing about sending some of the most horrible people in this country down to that mega prison. You know, people that push ladies into subways and hit old ladies with baseball bats to the head. Is that legal to do? Is that something you're allowed to do?
Well, Jesse, these are Americans who he is saying who have committed the most heinous crimes in our country. And crime is going to decrease dramatically because he has given us a directive to make America safe again. These people need to be locked up as long as they can, as long as the law allows. We're not going to let them go anywhere. And if we have to build more prisons in our country, we will do it.
Right. That's what I thought. And now.
That's what I thought. Right. If we have to build more prisons, that's what we need, is more prisons, more punishment, more punitive measures to change people's behavior, even though there's a history of data that says it really doesn't work. But more importantly, Pam Bondi didn't seem to agree that you could send Americans out, but I'm sure she will when the time comes. All right. Now I want to go to, I thought this was kind of funny. Actress and comedian Olivia Munn was on the Today Show with Jenna Bush. Is that who it is? Yeah. And she was making fun of the other celebrity women who went into space on Jeff Bezos's penis-shaped rocket, and I thought it was funny.
Wait, is it historic that you guys are going on a ride? I think it's a bit over the top, and yeah. I just think there are the cover of Elle magazine. I know. I mean, like, I don't know. Okay. I know. Space exploration was to further our knowledge and to help mankind. I mean, what are they going to do up there that has made it better for us down here? I don't know. I mean, I don't know if all that rocket fuel is good. I mean, this is a lot of resources being spent on. Yeah, and a lot of eyelash glue to nail that baby down. That's what I can't stop thinking about. If they get stuck up there like Armageddon style, and they've got to MacGyver it with their eyelash glue and stuff like that. Then I would be excited. Then that's something you'll tune into. And I'm not saying I hope they get stuck up there, but wouldn't that be fun? Okay. Just for a little bit. Well, I mean, yes. Just for a little bit. What's the point? It is.
Exactly. What's the point? They look bad. I think they look bad. All right. Now, for some laughs, and both Jimmy Kimmel and Stephen Colbert made fun of Trump's health and the outcome or results of his fake physical. I thought they were both pretty funny, so I wanted to share them. Here is Kimmel first.
The results are in for President Trump's annual physical exam, and guess what? He's in excellent health. Of course he is. He eats right. He avoids unhealthy foods, diet soda. He manages stress. He doesn't hang on to anger. He gets a good night's sleep. He limits his time on social media. He spends lots of time with loved ones and gets plenty of exercise getting in and out of that golf cart. And he's got a body like Brad Pitt to show it. This is some report. His active lifestyle continues to contribute significantly to his well-being. He stays fit thanks to frequent victories in golf events. Which reminds me, congratulations to President Trump on winning the Masters this weekend. This is Trump's doctor, the guy who wrote this up, Navy Captain Sean Barbabella. He is, that's also the face he made when Trump dropped his pants in the examination. Dr. Barbabella claims that Trump is 6'3", which he is not. He weighs 224 pounds. Just for comparison, Green Bay Packers quarterback Jordan Love is 6'4", 219 pounds. Honestly, it's difficult to tell them apart. This one's even better. This is Baltimore Ravens linebacker Kyle Van Noy, 6'3", 255 pounds. I don't know. Maybe they just weighed Trump's head. The doctor said Trump's BMI is 28. Right. And so is his next wife, by the way. It's really something else because the same group of people who think Anthony Fauci is a liar and want him arrested hear that Donald Trump, a person they can see with their own eyes, weighs 224 pounds. They go, finally, an honest doctor.
All right, Jimmy Kimmel on ABC, Jimmy Kimmel Live last night. Let's head over to CBS and listen to Stephen Colbert also make fun of Trump's physical and the doctor's picture.
I'm sorry to inform you that it's time to talk about Donald Trump's body. Yeah, I know. Yesterday, the White House shared the results of Trump's physical, which was conducted by White House doctor Captain Sean Barbabella, seen here learning he's going to conduct Trump's physical. Can I just stay over here and poke him with a broom for a while? Dr. Barbabella. That's his name, Barbabella? Really? Trump gave Trump a clean bill of health, saying his active lifestyle continues to contribute significantly to his well-being, including his, quote, frequent victories in golf events. Adding, his well-being was also due to a cruel and different universe where good, hardworking people are routinely diagnosed with terminal illnesses, but an objectively evil monster who only eats cheeseburgers and fried chicken lives forever. The world is chaos. There is no God, proven by his frequent victories in golf events. Barbabella, good man and thorough, wrote, I performed and supervised the comprehensive exam, which included diagnostic and laboratory testing, as well as consultations with 14 specialty consultants, because nothing says good health like your doctor saying, I think you're fine, I just need to consult with 14 specialty consultants.
All right, there you go. There is your comedy for today. And now it's time to get to my guest. We love Jeff Jarvis. He is the best. He's a journalist, a professor, a public speaker, a former television critic, an internet advocate. He's the media's pundit's pundit. We love Jeff. We want you to get all his books. Buzzmachine.com is the website. Check him out. Follow him on social media and let him know that you heard him here. We always love when Jeff joins us. And remember, I can't do this news segment. I can't have any of these great guests on, which I do pretty much every day, without your support. So please sign up for a paid subscription. If you haven't already, you can always upgrade your subscription and pay more. Go to patreon.com/Pete Dominic. This show is ad-free outside of me plugging for subscriptions. So I appreciate it. All right, let's do it right now with the always awesome, the amazing, the brilliant Jeff Jarvis. Yeah, Jarvis is joining us now. The very well-read Jeff Jarvis, just the man I wanted to talk to on a day filled with chaos as we descend just another step further into authoritarianism. All the things that the people that you read predicted are happening, that we read it.
We're there. None of this. Will there be a constitutional crisis? Will we be in fascism? Are we in authoritarianism? No. The answer to all those three things is yes, we are there. We have been there, but you cannot deny now that we are there.
What do we say to people who don't read experts on authoritarianism, on fascism, historians who studied it? I feel like it's probably one of the most convincing arguments for folks. Like, listen, even if you're apolitical, if you study the historians who covered authoritarian regimes, the fascists of the past, they're telling you this. What do you say to people who might not buy that or might not know that?
I think we need some simple things to point people to. Mike Masnick, who's a wonderful tech writer, has a post that says, you were sent to this page because you said something wrong about Section 230.
Oh, that's interesting.
It's brilliant, right? And it becomes a canonical place to send idiots. And I think we need that for totalitarianism. And there are things that exist. So what I'm about to say is not going to be very helpful because a wonderful writer named Annika Brockschmidt, who's an author with Rowohlt in covering Christian nationalism, wrote a really good post. The only problem is it's in German.
Oh. Well, somebody can translate.
Volksverpetzer.
Please don't.
And I think she's a podcaster too. And she went through just this. So let me go there and I'm going to cheat. And she says the fascism debate is over. And she was amazed when Jason Stanley, who's leaving for Canada.
Yeah, I know Jason. I had him on about 6 months ago. We talked for a real long time after. We grew up in the same town. And yeah, he's an expert on fascism, taught at Yale for years. And now he's moving to Toronto to teach there if he hasn't already.
And he has the canonical works, I would say, as short books. So one thing we can do is buy that book for people. Sure. But he spoke to an editor at Die Zeit in Germany, and the editor, oddly, at Die Zeit asked where we are with fascism. And Stanley said, yeah, we're there. And the editor said, does that lead to noise? Would you use the word too much? And he said, no, the fascism debate is over. The ones who once hesitated to use the term have long since given up. And we're there. So then she goes on, Brockschmidt, with a really good linked view. I on the socials, I asked her to come up with a translation of this because Americans need to read this. Right. So she went through a few of the symptoms with links as to the evidence. So denial of reality. Then asking, what is fascism? 1, politics of us versus them. We know how that works. 2, desire for violence against the others. Yep. 3, dehumanization of groups that serve as scapegoats. Plenty of those groups. 4, practice of violence. 5, aggressive ultranationalism. 6, narrative of the enemy within. Absolutely. 7, return to a mythical golden age. 8, the leadership principle. There's only one guy in charge. He'll fix it all. 9, ethnic thinking. 10, chauvinism and misogyny. 11, palagenesis. I'm not even sure I know what that means. I'm an idiot. And then describes Umberto Eco's Ur-fascism. And so this becomes pressure on the press is another one. Premature obedience. I'm almost done here. The warnings we have from academics, the ways to undermine solidarity. That kind of post, I think, is important to point people to say, argue with this. Tell me where we're not here. And to those who say, oh, if you use the word fascism too much, it takes away, you have to come up with a different word. No, this is the time to use it. Authoritarian, totalitarian, fascist. We are in a fascist regime. The rule of law is dead. It's dead for Trump because he doesn't want to follow the law. It's dead for American citizens because he's soon going to send American citizens to El Salvador with no due process. Due process is the essence of the rule of law, and we are losing it.
You mentioned Jason Stanley, his book, by the way, How Fascism Works, The Politics of Us and Them. And more recently, his newer book is Erasing History, How Fascists Rewrite the Past to Control the Future. And you're mentioning this German woman. I'll link to her in today's show notes so people can read everything that Jarvis.
And by the way, the wonderful trick, if you use Chrome, right click or whatever you call it in your machine, and there's translate to English right there in Chrome. And translation from Google is really good. My Deutsch is leider sehr schlecht. I try to read it. I'm crappy at it. I should have paid attention in school. I didn't, so I cheat. I use Google, and it's good. I
just want to throw this out there. I don't want to hear any more German for the rest of this interview. It makes me feel uncomfortable, unsafe. And then when you code switch into it, it just sounds wrong. And then at the same time, coming out of that face, it sounds exactly right. So there's a lot of mixed emotions for me, Jeff. You look a little you look a little bit like an old Nazi German general. No?
Tut mir sehr leid, mein Freund.
I don't know what he just said, but I think I'm in trouble. We're all in trouble because of everything that you just said, and it's real important to try to have the most sober discussion. Let's just go back to what we saw today in the Oval Office. We haven't seen a disaster that bad in the Oval Office since probably the day before, but certainly since Volodymyr Zelensky was in that office. But today you heard from the Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, Stephen Miller, of course, Trump himself, and the president of El Salvador, who's a real sycophant and has a very close relationship with a former Trump administration. I was reading about this the other day. A guy worked for Trump, very close, like they're personally close friends. Anyway, it seems that there's still not going to be returning this guy who there are no charges against. Apparently he was in the country illegally, but he checked in with ICE every year. Like he was a union member. He was a steel worker. He had 3 kids. And so there were anyway, his cause is not going away, Jeff.
Meanwhile, we have the tough students who are still being held in New Orleans. We have the Columbia student who's still being held. It's bad. There's no due process. And Stephen Miller, I can't believe they let him speak, because everybody who looks at him, speaking of somebody you don't want to speak in German, it's Stephen Miller.
Oh, yeah.
And they let him speak now because why not? They're already the awful people, so the awfulest of them speaks. And he's there trying to portray the Supreme Court decision as a victory for them because they weren't directly ordered to bring back this poor man. And he's hopeless. He's doomed. And it's being done in our name.
Abrego, you think there's no hope that he ever gets returned?
Not for the next 3.5 years, and then God knows where he is.
Interesting. Why do I feel like they're going to give in and that guy's going to be returned? Because that is a cause celeb and it's not going to leave the headlines, and he wants it to.
No, because the president who holds him in his grasp now said, why would I do that? Why would I send you a terrorist? And Stephen Miller says, well, just send him back after there had been due process. But what due process will there be? I don't have much hope for that.
So I think it's important just to mention that it's one thing to deport people who have actually committed crimes. Obama did that. Biden did that. It's another thing to deport people to a torture prison. Like usually people get deported not to prisons in other countries, but they just get sent out of America and never to be allowed to return, of course. But now they're deporting people to jails. And then today, and I guess it's the most important thing, he said on camera, on mic, homegrowns are next. He wants to send Americans. You already touched on it. You just mentioned it, but where does that put us?
It puts us in fascism. He's building concentration camps in Poland. What's the difference? He's going to send people to who doesn't agree with, who doesn't approve of, who he finds dangerous to him elsewhere. I didn't hear this myself. My wife did when I came in after errands today. She said that there was talk of trying to declare part of the prison American territory, so we're not actually deporting them, and that we're going to send people there again, obviously without due process of law. And even though the Supreme Court has said you need due process, they're not doing a damn thing about it. They didn't order them to bring it back because they wanted a 9-0 decision, but that 9-0 decision was lacking the front teeth. Yeah, everybody's doomed. We're at the whim of an insane totalitarian fool. And his horrible henchmen who are even worse than he is.
Yeah, say more about the people who openly support him, the electeds, not to mention the administration, his cabinet secretaries. They're all sycophants. Did you see that they're now, some of them, at least the head of the FCC, they're wearing pins with Trump's gold pins of Trump's head?
They might as well be Mao. They might as well be Mao pins.
Yes. Mao pins, or
they would carry around a little red book of his quotations if any of his quotations made any fucking sense, but they don't. Though I picked it up. I don't want to be seen with my fingerprints on it, but at the bookstore I saw a colorful book, Trump's Greatest Speeches. It had to have been published by The Onion, but no.
It's real?
Yeah, it's real. It's real. Can you imagine how they had to edit that shit?
I know. They edited that. Would you take that job for the money?
No.
I was joking.
No.
So now there's a whole bunch of sycophants that are obviously supporting him, and it doesn't seem to be like there are any guardrails yet. No, we haven't seen anybody in the administration stand up to him. We have seen some people get things wrong or make mistakes, like his DNI, and you could argue Peter Navarro, who's like his trade czar, and others, and they get benched. Elon seems to have been pushed to the outside a bit, but nobody, those are all accidents. It's not as if they spoke out or up against the president. And if you do that, you get fired or removed, whether you're a judge or an IG, an inspector general.
Yeah, and Elon's mistake was not disagreeing with him; it was losing an election and spending a fortune on it. That way, you're not as brilliant as we thought, Elon. And meanwhile, those who bow to him only find if you bend at the knee, you get kneecapped. Look at Columbia University, right? Again and again, they force Columbia to do whatever they say, and then it's never enough. So finally today, Harvard got some ivy-covered balls and said that they're going to fight. Law firms, as we know, are bending at the knee. Young Rachel Cohen is a model to every lawyer for having fought. There just aren't enough people in any sector who are fighting.
Who's Rachel Cohen?
She was at Skadden Arps, and she's the second-year law student who wrote the memo saying, if you don't turn around what you're doing, this before they bent at the knee, then I'm going to have to leave. And they cut off her email and said, well, then you're leaving. And they then bent at the knee. And so these law firms aren't going to fight for you. She's great. Rachel Cohen, you should have Rachel Cohen on. She's very good.
The law firm's name is Skadden. It says
Jarvis.
Skadden headline is Skadden. A Skadden associate quits and calls out big law for bowing to Trump. Huh. Yeah.
She's great.
She
was on TikTok before she got picked up by TV. She did TikToks explaining what she was doing, reading her letter, talking about other people who were doing the same thing. And unlike lawyers who were doing anonymous letters, she put her name behind it. And she's got the courage that so many of her seniors do not have.
Awesome. Sounds great. I'm looking at it right now. And then you've got you mentioned law firms and universities, and the news today again was that Harvard said they were not going to give in to the pressure. Right. Now I don't know how well you understand this. I'm sure better than I do. But what it seems to be here is the scheme that the Trump administration is saying to these universities is you get a lot of money from the federal government and for any number of reasons and grants and so on. And unless you do what we say, and what they're saying is affect curriculum, maybe fire this professor. You don't have a gender studies course or African American history or things that are in any way seen as pro-Palestinian. You don't have DEI. Like, your university has to do what we say. And if that's what the case is, you'll tell me here, but it is just another hallmark of authoritarianism and of this kind of Orwellian idea where, and all conservatives should be aghast at this, the federal government is going to tell academia what they can and can't teach. Am I close to?
Oh, you're exactly right. But the only thing I would disagree with is that there's anything called a conservative anymore in that vein. They're gone. They've been taken over by a virus. Fair enough. It doesn't exist.
Fair enough, but I almost feel, I won't give up, on the argument or the appeal that we should make the argument that government or big government should not be interfering with what your school teaches. I guess they'll probably.
Oh, that's so long over. That's so long over. Yeah, that's gone. A former colleague of mine, M. Gesson, wrote a column in the New York Times today. They were my colleague at the Newmark School of Journalism at CUNY, trying to argue that universities should get out of their mind protecting their endowments and their money and their grants, and should go out in the streets and teach, which sounds nice. But then Don Moynihan on Blue Sky, who was a professor at the University of Michigan, came back and said, whoa, we need research, and research is funded by federal research grants. And Gesson last worked at Bard, which is an undergraduate school, which isn't a research school, and Newmark is a professional school, it's a journalism school. It's not a research school. Now that I'm affiliated with Stony Brook University, it's an R1 research school. And I'm seeing how important research is, and how important funding, not just from foundations, but from the government is, to lead to all the breakthroughs we need in society. And we can't just drop that and say, oh, we won't do the research, because then we're not going to have anything to teach, for one thing. And it's going to pull out the economic support of education, which is exactly what they want. Ignorant people vote for Republicans, and they want people to be ignorant. And that's where this structure is. And we've got to stand up. So it took a while for Harvard to grow a pair, but they finally did. And I think it's critical that they learn the lesson of Columbia is bending gets you nowhere, but kicked.
I feel like ignorant doesn't do enough work in that it's more calculated than just ignorant. They want young people to believe this and not believe that about African American role in America, vaccines, any number of issues, gender issues, homosexuality, any of it, the history of the courts, the history of science, the history of anything. So they want people to not believe things that they've always been taught, and to believe these things. And most importantly, what gets lost in that is, you can help me think this through a little bit better, but college and universities are supposed to teach you critical thinking skills. They're not supposed to tell you what to think, but how to think.
And so it's not just that the thing about this is that a lot of the beliefs that you've just listed don't really matter. They're interchangeable. You can hate blacks or Jews or trans people or immigrants. It doesn't matter as long as you hate someone. And so it's not as if there's an ideology here that says, if we only got rid of all the trans people in the world, everything would be okay. Our mission is accomplished. No, they had to pick on who was available now. You can't do the Jews anymore because it's been done. You can't do black people anymore because it doesn't work in this country. So they had to find the next possible group to other. And so it's not so much that they have a particular ideology or belief set to inculcate. They just don't want you to have the critical thinking so that you're vulnerable to anything. And every time I'm on the show, I quote Hannah Arendt.
Yep.
But this is where she comes in. The people grab onto abstract notions, and they want you to be able to grab onto their abstract notions.
Mentioned law firms and mentioned universities. But what came first was the pressure on media outlets like ABC News and CBS News. And the latest is our orange tyrant authoritarian put out a post overnight attacking 60 Minutes and says that they should be substantially punished. Now, this is the second time he's gone after 60 Minutes in a month or longer. No, because he said that they edited a Kamala interview. Of course, they released the full edit, the full video, and they didn't, but it hasn't stopped him. So what about the power that he has and his Department of Justice has over major corporate media outlets, much less feel free to work your way down all the way to me in my tiny little shed, my apartment?
Anyone who speaks now is vulnerable. You're vulnerable on social media. You're vulnerable anywhere. They could decide to come after any of us. And the question is how people react. We've talked enough together about the New York Times and my disappointment with them and the Washington Post and CNN oftentimes, not always. But I think it's not as simple. In the case of ABC, they settled. In the case of CBS, he's suing. That's an obvious case of backsheesh. It's a little more subtle when it comes to the rest of media, right? Kicking the AP out of the pool, just harassing you, or which network was it? Discovery said, I just saw this today, that they wondered how could they be in a better relationship. And so the example that was given was Amazon paid $60 million for the Melania documentary. And so why don't you do a nice documentary or a nice series on hunting with Don Jr.?
Is that right? I never heard about that.
Yeah, I saw that today. I'm not sure. I wish I had the citation now, that I don't. And so I don't know how reliable that is. Discovery. It was on the socials. Maybe it was true. Maybe it wasn't.
Michael Wolff wrote Donald Trump circle suggested David Zaslav give Don Jr. a hunting and fishing show on Discovery.
Michael Wolff, thank you very much, Michael.
You trust that guy, Michael Wolff? Do you know anything about him?
Yeah, I've been around him in the past. He can drive me crazy, but he does he gets some inside scoops.
Today, also, Hungary is adopting a constitutional amendment to ban LGBT gatherings. Now, that's something I support because I don't love when gay people are out there forcing their homosexuality down my throat.
Because otherwise, just all it takes is about 30 seconds and you're flipped. Yeah. I know.
Every time I go to one of these gay gatherings, I always want to have sex with a bunch of guys, and I don't like that.
The problem is they don't want to have sex with you, and you're hurt.
That is untrue, my friend.
Oh, I hit where it hurts.
I couldn't go with your improv. I was like, I refuse to acknowledge that is not true. But this is pretty crazy, and I'm already seeing.
And it's coming here next.
Right. That's what I'm saying.
They want to ban anything that's not their view of gender, and they'll ban it. They'll do exactly what I mean. Orban is just his trial balloon. All right, I got a question for you.
It's an LGBT gathering. Like gay people are going to troll the government so hard. They're going to dress up as like the most masculine anti-gay types, and then just do the gayest, and then just have sex.
Hello, Village people. They performed at the inauguration.
But
I know it's not the real Village people, too.
Well, the truth is, though, that's not a good example because those guys basically kissed the ring. And Trump is a racist, anti-Semite, and anti-gay. But if you are a black or Jewish or gay person and you go kiss his ring, he's fine with you. He's okay with specific people who have professed their loyalty to him. And they get a pass. They don't get sent to El Salvador.
All right, Mr. Funny, I got a question for you.
All right.
So the White House Correspondents' Dinner, and I'll reveal that I think it should have been canceled years ago.
Oh.
But they keep on going with it. And then this year they were going to have Amber Ruffin do the talk. And as we all know, she was canceled. Literally canceled culture. Yeah. And the latest word was they're not going to have any comedian. But I saw some speculation today about what they could do or should do. If you were offered the White House Correspondents' Dinner, would you do it?
Oh, sure. Yeah.
So give me a rationale. It's an event that is all about access and cozying up to the Washington power structure.
Well, the reason I would do it is because I know that no one would come. And so I'm not a draw. So I think that it would be perfect. I don't know. I haven't really thought that through. Forget me. It's the question of who does it and what do they do. And it reminds me, of course, of my old boss, Stephen Colbert, and what made him most famous and most respected, certainly in comedy circles and in a lot of other circles, was when he basically attacked George Bush to his face during the Iraq War. So speaking truth right to power, I think, is always a really important thing to do anytime that you get that opportunity, whether you're Caitlin Collins, who I think is doing a great job in the Oval Office, or a comedian next to the president. So I always encourage that. However, I do see the point about, by the way, the White House Correspondents' Dinner, and the statement said, we don't want to do anything divisive. We want this dinner to be about journalism. And so in a way,
journalism should be divisive when you're in the middle of a fascism. But go ahead.
I actually don't. I'm not going to belabor that point because you're absolutely right. So I'm not going to try to convince anybody that's a fair point. You're right. You're right.
And so when journalists think it's our job to make everybody be cool in the middle of the fire, that's exactly what's wrong with them.
What do you think? Answer your own question.
Oh, I think it should be canceled. I think that it's the worst of access journalism. And I'm
sorry, you think the course, but
dinner itself. It's all about journalists dressing up, nerd prom as it's called among them.
Yep.
And they want to go and they want to be next to celebrities and the powerful in Washington.
Yep.
And they think that's what gives them value. No, their value should be being out in the rest of the damn country, hearing what the people are going through right now. And that's where it doesn't matter. Same as I think that the White House briefing room is now a charade, and the AP should still be there for the record, but everybody else should leave it. Jay Rosen from New York University said in 2016 they should just send their interns because it's a meaningless event.
I'm sorry, just to be clear, the Associated Press should be allowed to be there. They're being barred by the administration. And if they're not allowed, you believe that all the rest of the media outlets should join in solidarity and not.
And so the argument, we may have talked about this last time, the argument then is, my God, you're going along with him. No, he's devaluing the media. Devalue his event. Devalue the blonde liar who gets up there. Show that it doesn't really matter and it's not truthful and it's not worth the attention that it's given. And go do real reporting out in the world.
I think that's a really interesting thought experiment that is not going to happen because of the reason that these outlets do exist.
It's the poison of access. There's a lot of poisons in journalism, right? One is access. Another one is attention. Another one is just simply ego and celebrity. If we really rethought journalism at its most fundamental basis, it's about helping communities inform themselves, and there shouldn't be stars. So the New York Times of late has these creepy moving pictures that look like Harry Potter's newspaper.
Oh, God. I know what you're talking about, yeah.
I'm doing a silent miming for those of you on audio. And so yesterday they had, and so I think it's, the photos are creepy, number one. Number two, they do it with their own people a lot. So you see Barbaro there looking very serious all the time on the page. Barbaro, moving his head, right? So I think it was yesterday they had not just two-thirds down the way of the page, but at the top of the page, one of their correspondents, whose name I forget, who was talking about the on and off tariffs and was excusing the idea of insider trading on that basis. That, no, there's nothing really wrong with Trump telling people that he's going to do this and they make some money. So what? There's not a law against it. That's what the New York Times was saying. And it's bad enough they were saying it. It's second bad that they were promoting at the top of the page. But third, that they were making the journalist the star of that. Right. It's a star turn. And that's not what journalists and journalism should be. We shouldn't be in this to be famous. Of course, so thank you very much for having me on today. And my name is Jeff Jarvis, and I have 5 books. So I like it myself. I'm not denying that the attention is nice, but that's not our raison d'etre.
No.
And that's disturbing. I think that the papers are doing that. And the Times especially is doing that now.
I got to ask you also about coverage of and just any thoughts around trade war is how I talk about it. Last week, of course, that was the big story. Trump caved, of course, and we can talk about why. But yeah, how do you see that? How should that have been reported? What's the framing on that? Who got it right or wrong? Any answers to any of those questions, and just your thoughts around his cave and why you're hedging on that description.
2 Saturdays ago, I went out and went to a rally in Montclair, New Jersey, because it's the Upper West Side of New Jersey. And Cory Booker showed up, and I made my sign. I went to Michael's beforehand. I bought some cardboard, and I got a Sharpie, and I made my sign. And I'm going to embarrass myself with you right now. I misspelled fascist.
I do it every day.
I couldn't say it was a typo. It was my own hand that did it. Luckily, I bought more than one piece.
I do. I put fascism as tags in almost every day's podcast. I can never get it right. It's simply the S or the C. So I have nothing but mercy for that. I can't spell it so much.
C after S, except for, yeah, I know. So anyway, I have another piece of cardboard out there, and then I think the 29th there's going to be more rallies. And what I wanted to think of today is my variation on "It's the economy, stupid." My sign is going to say "It's stupid's economy," because he took a perfectly good, growing, healing, expanding economy that was Bidenomics, God bless it, and that was working, and he purposefully ruined it. And I don't think, and they're making this into, well, his tariffs and this and that, and they're trying to explain it. No, he took something that was working and single-handedly ruined it, not just in America, but around the world. And they're not treating it, I don't think, sufficiently as his, solely his. And they're not going out in the world enough. They're doing some. I see some stories, right? The farmers who were pissed off, or the beef guys who were happy, this little business who doesn't know where they're going to get their supplies. Yes, they're doing some feature stories on that. But it should be a lot more. Once again, it should be not Trump-centric, but people-centric, public-centric. It's our economy. And I'm of the age, the hair ain't prematurely white, that I don't have the time to make back my 401k.
I hear that from a lot of people. One of my best friends is 65. What up, Zaps? And my dad, who's 80, he's retired, but he doesn't. No one likes seeing their portfolio tank at any age if they have one, much less when they're close to needing it. I would think it would outrage so many Americans that, what about if you're a MAGA Trump supporter and you're in that category of people around a certain age that's about to cash in, and they're long held investments that they've seen slowly conservatively grow? Does that person change their mind on Donald Trump?
No. So yesterday I drove into my well-to-do Starbucks, and which I shouldn't waste money on, I know, but it's my only pleasure left, that and wine. And next to me pulls this Cybertruck jerk, and he's got his business plastered all the way around it, and he parks horribly next to me. And I'm obviously shaking my head a little bit, mainly at his parking, but also at the idiocy. And he rolls down his window. "Oh, what's the matter? What's the matter?" So I try to find my kind of inner Pete, and I say, that is, it's ridiculous. And we go back and forth a little bit. And it's worthless. I shouldn't have done it. It's absolutely pointless. But then as he's walking away, the last administration was a joke. You can't see. You can't see. He's ruining your own economy. People aren't going to be able to afford to hire you, jerk, to get the water out of their basement. And they are blind. They are that blind. I quote once again Hannah Arendt, right? That is what a totalitarian amounts to. You convince people to believe what's unbelievable. And so there is a proportion, probably 40% of the country, who are irredeemable.
God, I love
this. Can we get the others?
God, I love that you tangled with a Tesla truck driver who parked poorly in a park. And I love that. And you called it your inner Pete. You just made my day. Listen, this is what I say. Choose your battles, but more importantly, to quote Braveheart, and you did it, fight and you might die. Run and you'll live. Not Jarvis. He fought. He stayed. He fought.
I rolled up my window. I'm chicken. I'm not going to get it.
Oh, I love it. All I want to know is every other nook and cranny of that story, what he looked like, what he was wearing. Yeah, you're right. It's not worth it. And you don't want to put yourself in harm's way. But, man, people are sure having fun with those Tesla trucks. People hate Tesla. His car company has lost like 9% over the last quarter. That's buying?
The best schadenfreude there is. Yeah. But by the way, speaking of buying cars, I just want to add this in.
Yeah.
On TikTok, I see all these great videos. The Chinese electric cars are unbelievable.
Yeah,
they're
BYD.
wonderful. They're not just BYD, others as well. They have tons of features. The batteries last. They'll replace the batteries instead of charging. Luxurious inside, really smart, half the price of American cars. Screw the trade war. I want a Chinese car.
Yeah. Yeah. Look at you, communist.
Yeah, fine.
I read the same thing, that if it was China or that the technology is available, that you're going to be able to charge up a 300, 400-mile battery, and at the same time it takes to fill up your gas. It's like the technology exists. I don't know if it's affordable yet, just a few minutes. And they're going to have it first because they're investing in renewable energy, and we're investing in coal. Beautiful, clean Jeff Jarvis coal, which I think is great. It's great for America. So more trade war talk, Jarvis. You're seeing a lot of pressure being put on the administration from the captains of industry and Republican donors, especially. And for sure, that's one of the reasons why he definitely walked them back. But again, a lot of journalists and reporting headlines are getting it wrong in terms of that he put a pause. He did not put a pause. He lowered the tariffs. And most importantly, even if you agreed with this strategy, the way that it's being rolled out and the confusion that there is between the Secretary of Commerce, the Treasury Secretary, and his trade people and his economics people, Kevin Hassett, Peter Navarro, they're all on different pages.
Yeah.
And they go on TV and they testify on different pages. There's going to be exceptions made for electronics. Trump's no, there's not going to be. Like, even if you supported it, their ability to govern is almost something that gives me hope, because it's the recipe for failure every day.
There were a lot of incompetent Nazis too. I wouldn't find too much hope there. And they have guns, and they have jails, and they have the power that we don't have. So no, I don't find much hope in their incompetence.
All right.
I think they'll screw it up. But the other thing, I was trying to think about this morning, Pete, that if you try to get into Trump's psychology, which is an impossibility, but you say, okay, he puts all the tariffs on and everything goes down. Everybody says that's the one thing he actually believes, because he's stupid and ignorant and doesn't understand how it comes.
Yeah, like President McKinley in the 1870s.
He thinks that's how he's going to get a different tax money and whatever. But then when he did pull them back, the market goes crazy, right? But he couldn't stand happiness. He couldn't stand that. So he had to prevaricate again to bring it back down, right? And then he goes with the phones and computers and chips, and he pulls back, doesn't get rid of them, but pulls back on those, and those stocks go up, and he couldn't stand that. So he immediately says, oh, it's not going to last forever. I'm going to go back after them. He wants misery. And all I can figure is that his daddy was horrible to him, and he thinks he's the daddy to the world now. And he wants to do to the world what daddy did to him.
Oh, that's one way of looking at it. Who knows? He just really, cruelty is the point. And what's even more upsetting is that so many of his supporters feel the same way, that they would rather lose their investment portfolios. They'd rather see people be put in pain and lose their money, their jobs. I don't know if they quite look at it that way, but it would seem hard to see it any other way. At least RFK Jr. is doing a good job. I just want to trigger you because I know you've been talking about him.
Yeah, it's just, he's killing people. He's killing people. It's awful. Where was it? I think South Jersey now has lost its measles hide immunity because one community down there doesn't get vaccinated, and it doesn't take everybody not to get vaccinated. It just takes too many to be unvaccinated. So it doesn't work as well. And yeah, it's dangerous. And this goes back to what we talked about at the beginning about universities and education and science and medicine. It's an utter contempt for knowledge and intellect.
RFK says that we'll know the causes of autism by September, though.
Which is how science works. You put a deadline on the scientists, and by God, they'll find the answer.
That is that is not, I don't think that's how it works.
That's not how it works. No.
That's how science works. All right. Where are you finding hope and joy?
Oh, man. I'm not. I realized that I hadn't watched the whole season of Hacks, so I got to start watching that one. Yeah, what do you think? What do you think of that one? Do you like that show?
I never saw Hacks. No, I watched that.
A comedy show? A show about comics?
Yeah. Oh, that's why. Yeah. No, that gives me too much. It's too close to home, especially that one. Yeah.
Really?
I don't like to relive and think about my days in comedy. I succeeded in every way I wanted to. I lived my dreams. I loved it, but sometimes I'm tempted to go back and live that life a little bit, but it's bad. It's not great. It's not great for so many reasons. And I had as much as I had a lot of success, man, I saw a lot of pain and felt a lot. And so watching that show and other shows like it it's a little traumatizing to use.
I can see that, but it's a good show.
I just finished, speaking of traumatizing, The White Lotus. Did you watch that?
No, I'm not into that.
You don't need.
No. It's so much. I go and try to watch something, and I go to Netflix, and I go to Amazon, and I go to elsewhere. I don't go to Paramount Plus, but I go to whatever places I do subscribe to, and it's all dark.
Oh, how about this? I want to ask you this, and I almost forgot, because I don't know if you watched that show Adolescence on Netflix.
I did.
Speaking of dark. And you've been critical of Scott Galloway here and before, and I think I might disagree with you, but I don't know. So I just want to ask you that to end on, because I feel like Galloway is resting a lot of his ideology on the work of Richard Reeves, who he wrote a book about he's got an initiative now, a nonprofit, a think tank for boys and men. And so I think I probably agree with a lot of what Galloway says, but you find it to be disturbing, I would almost.
I do. Galloway was on CNN this weekend with, what's his name? The guy who lasted 14 days.
Scaramucci was on with him.
Scaramucci. And so with their new podcast. And Galloway, I find Galloway's
doing the podcast with Scaramucci?
Yes, about men and boys.
Oh, I didn't know that. Okay, go ahead.
Oh, yeah. And I found it really creepy. I find Galloway's obsession with young men's sex lives creepy. I find that his argument that, and he's blaming them and saying if they don't get their act together, they don't get laid, and then they're not get married, and then they don't get jobs, and then the world's all screwed up. And so he's blaming them. But there's also a touch of incel about it, in that somehow if they could just get laid, everything would be okay with them. And so it implies some blame, I think, on women, even though he says women are far ahead, women are far better off. He's complimentary to young women, but still the equation there is if these guys don't get laid, well, they're all going to be messed up in life, and that's the end of them. And they don't have families, and they don't have children. And that whole idea of, it's like Elon Musk wanting everybody else to have children, and none of his damn business. Now back to the show, to Adolescence. So I watched it. It was well produced. It was interesting, all true. But I found it disturbing in a few ways. It hints at, it's the internet. He was in his room at night, and we didn't do anything. Could we have done anything? And no, it was the internet, and the light was on. He was there all the way. And so it just leads you up to that presumption, unless everybody else fill in that blank, as if, that's what caused this kid to be screwed up and murder a girl. No, it's not that simple. Nothing is that simple in life, A. B, what really disturbed me, and unlike Galloway, it was worse than Galloway, in that it implied that the cause was that she called him an incel. So that made it her fault.
Right.
That she did this. And yeah, he's a loser, but she shouldn't have called him a loser. It's basically what it was. And they don't go so far as saying she got what she deserved, but it was victim blaming. And so everybody, now that there's talk about doing laws in the UK because of the impact of this, and this is exactly the problem I have, is that it's ignorant, it's uninformed by the research. And look at the research of Amy Orban and Andrew Przybylski from Cambridge or Oxford, one of those two. They do a lot of really good work on this, and I quote them at length in my book, The Web We Weave. And I think it's important to base our discussion of young people and technology and their lives on actual research, not on our presumptions. Because let's remember that your generation and mine was completely ruined by comic books and television and rock lyrics, never mind drugs.
Are you familiar with Richard Reeves, his book, Boys and Men?
I've not read it.
I'd love to know what you think of it and his work, because I'm not familiar with those two academics that you mentioned. I believe that his book is based on research, or else I wouldn't have been referring to it so much. And the way that you put it about Galloway, I wouldn't really argue with it. And I do agree with your actual analysis of Adolescence. I felt the same way. But then one pushback I got was they didn't want to say what the cause was, because there's a myriad causes that are making boys and teens, quote, this way, whatever we want to describe. But let me just walk back and ask you, what do you think the problem is? Because Reeves and many others, including myself, think that men and boys are suffering in lots of different ways and having lots of different problems. And we need to acknowledge that and try to figure out what can be done about it. And I think that it's hard to diagnose, and I'm not going to diagnose it. But I do think, especially I'm talking a lot about men, but young boys as well are suffering in certain ways that make it, or frustrated in certain ways that are making them act out and making them become horrible people, horrible men, and do terrible things.
I'll go with their methodology.
Or just be depressed and killing themselves also, sorry.
That too. But I'll go with their methodology. Let's look at women. And what's the major differentiation with women and men? It's education. Look at the enrollment now in colleges. It's heavily women. Look at what happened in East Germany. The women left because they got educated and they found opportunities in West Germany, and they left the men behind. Women are getting educated. And what's the right doing? They're trying to tear down education because they want angry men. Right. Angry men are their fuel. They're their troops. They're exactly what they want them to do. And so that's where this comes from, is that the anger is fueled. And, it's hard to, you and I often talk about our privilege, and we have it and have it in plenty, right? And we're not black, and we're not women, and we're not trans, and we're not immigrants. And so that's not to say that a young white cis male doesn't have plenty of cause to be depressed or angry. Certainly, they can be. But to act as if it is a generational and racial entitlement is exactly where we shouldn't go. We shouldn't be acting as if we have to pay special attention to young white men when we didn't pay special attention to young black men who have their own difficulties in this country and don't get the same attention.
But of course, there's a huge issue with sexism and misogyny in the black community with men. But and going back to your point about education, if that's the issue, that women are getting better educated, I feel like that doesn't answer or solve for 14, 15-year-old boys that are getting the same education that girls are. They're not. They're
getting presumed to do. It's a kind of a reversal of where we were when I grew up, where girls can't do science, girls can't do this, girls can't do that. So the boys got the attention. Now girls are succeeding in education, and the boys are presumed to be less competent, I think. And I think that happens at home too. And it becomes a bad cycle that less is expected of them.
How much do you think boys are being radicalized online by the, quote, manosphere? Podcast, YouTube, comment pages, internet.
The manosphere is a bunch of horrible jerks. And so they're susceptible to that. But it's like we said earlier, it's back to Hannah Arendt, fourth time. It's a siren call of belonging. That the first step is to alienate people from their society and their community. The next step is then to take advantage, to exploit the vulnerability that then occurs. Right. And then what you fill into the vessel doesn't matter. Right? It can be hatred of women. It can be hatred of trans people. It can be hatred of another race. It can be hatred of institutions. It doesn't matter. It's fill in the blank. And so the radicalization, the problem I have with that as a framework is that it almost presumes an ideology that doesn't exist. We're going to find people who are vulnerable, and we're going to exploit that vulnerability. Doesn't matter how.
That is what happens, though, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
So it's not that there's something. Is there a lot of toxic masculinity? Yes. But it could just as easily be racism. It could just as easily be anti-Semitism.
Right.
It could just as easily be xenophobia.
But before the internet, that was pretty generally easily diagnosed as belonging. And so a lot of young men would find belonging in extremist groups.
Right. But what precedes that is alienation, is a sense of not belonging to a community. Now, you're going to have those who are going to argue that's why they have to go to church, and that's why they have to be in bowling groups, and that's why they have to be in the Little League. And as somebody who could not hit a ball to save my life, don't think that's the solution to everything. Were you good at sports?
Yeah.
No, figures.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All sports.
Were you?
But I was never.
The coaches liked you.
Yeah, but no, I played all sports. I'm a good athlete, but I'm not. I was on the varsity teams. I played college lacrosse, but I never got off the bench. I sat the bench.
Yeah, okay, but you
could do enough. I'm really good next to someone who's not athletic.
See, you'd be brilliant next to me. I can't do a thing. Too much body for one brain to handle. Never could do a damn thing.
You can find belonging anywhere now.
Yes, you can.
You don't need sports. You could join a role playing Dungeons and Dragons or cartoons or race car, any number of things that you're interested in. You can find belonging on the internet. Anything, plants, gardening.
Yeah, part of the problem I think is that we diminish the value of that belonging. Oh yeah, lonely little suckers down in his basement playing Dungeons and Dragons. Oh, value if you find your joy and find your companionship where you can. Good, fine.
I've been known to do that. I've been known to minimize judge and minimize someone based on their interests?
Podcasting.
Podcasting is cool. Chicks love it. Jeff, always great talking to you. I really appreciate it. Thank you, sir.
Certainly.
Yeah, Jeff Jarvis, everybody. Go let him know you heard him on the show. Really, go to Blue Sky, go to all the social media and say, Jeff, we loved it, and share a link to the show, as many of you do every day. I'm so grateful to those of you who do, Tina and Kim and Pete and Mindy and many others who I see promoting the show. It makes a huge difference. I usually reshare those as well. So please let everybody know about what we are doing here. I know there's lots of different choices out there, and I'm so grateful that you've stuck with me for as long as you have. Or if you're new to the show, that you're enjoying it, let me know. standupwithpete@gmail.com. That is my email, and I will talk to you tomorrow right here on Stand Up. Bye-bye.